Hello everyone, welcome to Uplink 2724. Today I'm going to be making a video on how to start and configure an Abiotic Factor dedicated server for the new 1.0 update called Cold Fusion. We're going to be going over specifically for Linux Debian, but this is also applicable to Mint or Ubuntu. There is an existing community guide for Linux, but there's a few updates I think that need to be made, and I'm going to show you some other configuration options that aren't shown in that community guide. So to follow along with this video, I recommend going to my website. I'll have this linked down in the description, and this will include all of the commands we're going to be running today, so that we can get you up and running. So some prerequisites. Really you just need a computer for Debian or Ubuntu or whatever you're using that you can SSH into or RDP into, whatever your situation is. Here I'm actually running this inside of a virtual machine, but the process will be exactly the same. And this is going to be a essentially fresh install of Debian. I've changed some of the colors to make it look nice, but otherwise it's a brand new installation. We're actually going to start by making a new user, because for security reasons it's better to have a new user for these sorts of things, because we don't want them running with root permissions. So in this case I'm adding a new user. I'm just going to call them Abiotic. You can call them whatever you like, but for this entire tutorial I'll be referring to them by Abiotic. And then once we have that set, you can set a password to this user, but for now we're just going to leave it with none. So now we're going to prepare the server with some required packages. So we'll just run a quick update and then upgrade. Make sure our system is all up to date. Perfect. So with that out of the way, now we're actually going to install some of the required packages we're going to need. These packages are going to come default with at least Debian, but they may not come with Ubuntu or Mint. They should, but depending on how you've done your installation, they may not. So go ahead and grab all these. As you can see, 0 upgraded, 0 newly installed. So we're all good there. And then now is where we're going to install Wine. Unfortunately, Abiotic Factor does not have native builds for Linux. So in order to get it around that and still run it on our Linux server, is we're going to have to use Wine so that we can run Windows applications on top of Linux. And this is where it's going to deviate from the community guide just a little bit. But first we're going to add the repositories. And I should note here is a link on the website that will take you to the official Wine HQ installation guide for Wine in Debian and Ubuntu. And this is all the same. So go ahead and run this first command. And then I'll go ahead and copy this second one. Perfect. So now, depending on what you have, if you have Debian or Ubuntu, you're going to have to use one of these different commands. This is also for Linux Mint versions. So here I'm using Debian 12 Bookworm, so I'm going to be using this command right here. And this is the same one that is linked, or that I pasted into my guide. Okay, now that we have that done, we're going to actually install it. So first, we're just going to add the i386 architecture. And then we're just going to run an apt update. Okay, now we're actually going to install Wine. We're going to be installing Wine HQ stable. The guide, for whatever reason, has you installing the staging version, but we're going to get the stable version. And then when prompted, press Y for yes. Alright, and with that out of the way, we're going to install a few other things that we'll be needing when we run Wine. Should be a pretty quick install. Cool. So now with that out of the way, we actually have Wine installed and ready to go. Now we're going to have to get SteamCMD, which is the command line version of the Steam client. This is what we're actually going to use to download the Abiotic Factor files, specifically the server files. So we're going to have to add in this repository. And then when prompted, just press enter. And then after adding any repository, we're just going to do a quick sudo apt update. Cool. And then lastly, sudo apt install SteamCMD itself. Alright, so you're going to get a Steam license agreement. You can use the arrow keys, scroll through all this, and when you're ready, press tab down to OK, and then arrow key down to I agree, and press enter. With that done, now we're going to install the server files themselves. So you can install your server files wherever you want. In this case, I'm going to make a directory in our Abiotic users folder, and I'm going to make a subfolder in here just called Abiotic server to keep things nice and clean. So with that directory made, now we're going to actually download the game via SteamCMD. This command right here is assuming that you have the same exact directory, home Abiotic server, which you can see here. So running this command, we're just going to be forcing to install the Windows files. We're going to need those, and then force installing it in the directory that we've made. Go ahead and copy this over. And this part's going to take a little while, depending on your internet connection speed, as well as if you're doing this on an SSD or not. Alright, with that done, now we can actually get on to setting up the server start script. So to do this, we're actually going to start by making the actual file itself. I'm putting this in this location within the Abiotic Factor install. And then we're going to go ahead and nano into it. So this is where we put our startup instructions. Here's the default one. There we go. So there's a few things that you might want to change here. Starting from the left, we have the max server player count. I'll just leave it at 6 for now. As well as the port, I would leave that at 7777. This is your game port. And then of course the query port, I would leave that at 27015. You can set your server password to whatever you want. And then the Steam server name, so what the name will appear as on the server browser. And then world save name. We're going to call this one Cascade 2724. And then Control S, Control X, save and exit. Cool. Now, at this point, you're going to actually need to port forward those ports, port 7777 and 27015, both the TCP and UDP traffic. This is going to entirely depend on what router you have, what brand of router. So you may have to look online for your specific brand to see how to port forward. It's typically fairly straightforward. You're just going to need to be able to log into your router. One other thing you may want to do is install perhaps uncomplicated firewall or any sort of firewall for some added protection, assuming you're opening this up to the internet. This is a pretty simple tool to use just to get a nice firewall going, and you'll need to allow ports 7777 and 27015 through UFW for that to work. Moving on from that, we're going to actually start the server. First, we actually have to give permissions to our Abiotic user. First thing we're going to do is actually give them ownership of that Abiotic server folder that we downloaded everything into. So let's go ahead and give that to the Abiotic user and group. Cool. Next, we're going to give them execution commands or execution permissions for that runserver.sh that we just made. And with that done, I can go ahead and go to a new tab, and I can sudo into the Abiotic user, and we can test this. So go ahead and grab this command and cross your fingers, have some faith. It's going to give us some errors. Let's try that one more time. Okay, for whatever reason I had to run it twice. The first time I just got many errors. Second time it worked. So you can see the server is starting up. Now to actually end the server properly, we're going to use Control Z. So I'll wait until it's fully started up. Starting session now. Okay, we should be good to Control Z and end that. Alright, the next thing I'm going to want to talk about here, because now you actually have your server up and running, people should be able to connect to it, assuming you port forwarded properly and your firewall is open. I'm actually going to talk about updating the server. It's actually pretty straightforward. All you got to do is run that install command that we did earlier to download the server files. You can just run it again and SteamCMD will update it. However, this is kind of tedious doing this every time, especially right now after a major update. There's probably going to be several hot fixes, and I don't really want to do that every day or other day. So instead, what we're going to do to make that easier, as well as just make the whole thing simpler to manage, is we're going to go ahead and run this as a service. So going back to my user with sudo permissions, we're going to make our abiotic.service in etc systemd system, and then go ahead and copy this base configuration I have here. You can change this however you need for your purposes, but by default this should work pretty well. And what this is going to do, first off you can set a description up here. And what this will do is it'll run this command when the service starts. And this is actually the update command that I just showed you, or the install command rather, which will update the server if it's needed, and then afterwards it will start the server itself. And this will automatically restart, so when it's enabled, if let's say your server shuts down, loses power, starts back up, it'll automatically update and then start the server for you. So go ahead and save and exit. So with that, all we're going to have to do is start or enable and start the servers. So sudo systemctl enable Abiotic. Cool, so now it's enabled. And then we're just going to run a start command. And this is automatically configured to run under that Abiotic user. Okay, so sudo systemctl status Abiotic. There we go. It is enabled and it is currently activating. It's in that start pre. If we check back again, probably now, it's still activating. Alright, sorry about that. Had to go ahead and restart my virtual machine. But as you can see now, I have it active and running since I rebooted. Perfect. So now that we have that, I'm actually going to run a quick test for you guys. I'll hop over to my main machine here and I'll log into this. Alright, here I am in Abiotic Factor called Fusion. Enter the facility, we're going to go ahead and join a server and direct connect. Currently this virtual machine is just on my local network, so I'll just put in the local IP address for that. Port is 7777 by default, and my password was 2724. Click join. And here we are. We are in. So here we are in the game. And you can see there, Cascade 2724 is the name of the world save. Alright, so now you've seen that we can start up our server through the service and join it. Some more things I'm going to talk about here. Well, first off, if you ever need to stop the service or disable it, you can just run it with the sudo systemctl stop Abiotic, as well as disable Abiotic. Moving on, we're going to talk about Sandbox Settings. So if you want to change some of the different numbers that go into your experience in the game, you get this in single player, but a lot of people want to do this in multiplayer, making it more difficult, especially with veteran players. And this is how you're going to do that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our sandbox settings.ini file. And this is going to be located in our game installation in Abiotic Factor. Then we're going to go to saved, save games, server, worlds. And then here's where you're going to have to put your world name. Mine is Cascade 2724. This is the one that you set earlier in the guide. And then sandbox settings .ini. And then we're going to nano into it. Cool. So here's all the defaults on the guide. And I've also included a link down here to the Abiotic Factor wiki. And this has all of these settings, has the defaults, as well as an explanation for all the settings. So if any of these change in the future, you can find them all here. New to the 1.0 version of the game, from what I recall, bridge supports is a new setting you can set, as well as home worlds, and allow character reset. So go ahead and copy all of these stock ones. Here they all are. You can come through here, go to that page I just talked about, and you can find descriptions of all of these. A lot of them are self-explanatory, but if you want some more information, go ahead and head there. Change these to your liking. When you're done, Control S and Control X. Save and exit. Alright, so for some further reading, you've got the uncomplicated firewall that I was talking about earlier. If you want to set that up, that's an option. As far as our launch parameters go that we used earlier, I included a link, the GitHub, which will show you some more launch parameters that you can use if you need them. And then also, if you're looking to migrate a single player save to your server, there's also a link here to that GitHub as well. It'll show you how to do that. Basically, you just take it, throw it into the worlds folder, and you should be good. Alright, this concludes my guide on how to start and configure an Abiotic Factor Cold Fusion dedicated server in Debian, Mint, or Ubuntu. If you have any questions or you're running into any issues, feel free to leave a comment on this video. I'll be sure to update the guide if anything changes. And have fun out there in 1.0. See you next time.